Okay. Of course, the question of jobs is only one of the many aspects that internet diffusion touches, but it's the theme of today's conversation. So here, just some global evidence and a couple of questions. Then Piotr Lewandowski will follow on with some questions that are also more specific to Poland, and then we'll start with our debate. So I probably don't need to convince you that the growth of broadband and internet has been exponential in the past few years. What you see here on the left is just a graph showing the millions of connections between 2010 and 2015. The exponential path is kind of almost visible from just this bar, the bar graph, but also what is interesting is that how the bar graph is split and how much more intense the growth has been in emerging Asia and Pacific in terms of broadband connections. You probably won't be surprised because that's also the most populous area in the world, but it's not irrelevant that this increased penetration is happening there, which is a region that is strongly competing for jobs that are now brought to them through the internet. And the graph on the side is just something that shows that the content of broadband penetration and how these communications happen is increasing in terms of data that travels through this connection rather than voice, which was the traditional way in which communication would happen across. So I couldn't find any better picture for opportunities, but this exponential growth in interconnectivity brings many opportunities, and that would be the lady with the key, but also some risks. The biggest opportunity that we probably all see in terms of jobs is the potential for inclusiveness. Many jobs are brought to people who would have been otherwise excluded from these jobs just because of their geographical location, and the internet just brings them to them. However, if we think about the risks, we could ask many questions, and I leave them with you for the end, but just to give you a preview, it's not only how many jobs that we care about, but it's also the quality of the jobs, to whom they go, what skills are needed for these jobs, what type of protection or different design of social insurance systems would help economies develop and face the risks that are brought about by a different configuration of labor relationships. But let's look at the bright side first. There are many studies that have tried to see, is the internet or broadband penetration good? And in general, these studies say yes. There is an association between broadband penetration and internet penetration with GDP growth. The estimates vary. 10% of broadband increase is associated with anything between 0.3% of GDP increase to 1.5%. What is interesting is how this GDP growth happens and what is the implication for jobs. Clearly, there will be more jobs that are related to ICT, but there will be also more jobs that are generated through network and externalities effects. And there are also estimates there that show that, one ICT or 10% of broadband penetration is associated with that type of GDP growth, and one jobs in ICT is associated with anything between 1.5 to 4.5 jobs in related services, accounting, legal services, anything that supports this process of new ICT jobs. As I mentioned, how internet affects our lives, it's not only through jobs. But if we look at the lens of jobs, even there, we can really try to unpack this impact. First of all, it affects how skills are created. This will be, in part, also the subject of our second panel today. But if we just want to sort of think about it, think about Khan Academy, or think about how our children, or some maybe of the younger part of the audience has already learned. knowledge that travels through internet has changed the standards to which teachers are held to. Their role in the class, they are not the provider of the knowledge, but they are kind of ringmasters of how this knowledge is shepherded to the students. There is a question of how ICT, education through ICT is reaching to children, and what it means for children in disadvantaged areas. Does it mean that they're going to get more knowledge because their geographical location doesn't matter anymore? Or does it mean that if they still do not have a computer or a sort of the infrastructure for a connection to the internet, they're still going to be left behind, and more so? There are if we think about jobs, and we think about jobs that are supplied and the skills that go with that supply, then the natural other complement is to think the jobs that are created and the skills that are demanded. And ICT helps create jobs in different ways. Of course, jobs in the ICT sector, computer skills, support services, but also all these other jobs that we talked about that are created through network effects. Today we'll also have the opportunity to discuss how the supply and demands are matched differently thanks to the internet. And I'm not only thinking about standard platforms of matching that are used by public employment offices or by companies that match, that do headhunting, but I'm also thinking about new configurations of how a demand for a task is matched to the supply for that task. And we'll have the opportunity to discuss that with one of our panelists today. When we think about the new jobs that are created, there's a whole variety, there's a whole world out there. There are the traditional ICT-enabled jobs, the call centers, IT and IT-enabled services, new processes that are created to support businesses so that these businesses can reach better their customer base. And there are new ICT-enabled work, so the kind of new frontier, the most recent. And also there we can run the gamut from micro work that is done through portals such as Amazon Turk, where you just you can be contracted to click on the pupil of an image because the computer does not have that skill, but you as a human have that skill. Online contracted through virtual markets for more complex tasks, and this is something that we'll discuss with in this panel today, or also the app economy that has brought to a large set of users new services that could be unthinkable a few years ago. I think it's kind of natural in all this gamut to think about a gradation of quality of these jobs. So if we think about clicking on the pupil of the eye, that is a simple low-skill jobs, and we might be wondering where people can go from that type of jobs. So what is the counterfactual for them? Better jobs they could do otherwise, or no job at all, and this is really a great opportunity for them. Two more complex forms of bringing jobs to this virtual location, which could be outsourcing, business processes outsourcing, or knowledge processes outsourcing that have a different degree of complexity and require different type of skills. And here just an image of the many platforms that, just names of many platforms that I'm sure you will have heard of, and just some data that come from ELANS on the fact that there is evidence that virtual work offers growing income potential. And the work that is done through ELANS is one where there is embedded a sort of certification of skills and rating of performance that can allow some sort of growth, also individual and in terms of credibility in the market. And the contractors of Odesk and Amazon Mechanical Turk, which has a different type of, which speaks to a different kind of market, come from all over the world, including the US and including Philippines, Asia, and Europe. My colleague Carlo Lossotto, also a country fellowman of mine from Italy, always brings up this example of this electrical engineer in Italy from one of the small provincial towns, very much like the one where I come from, who decided to leave the labor market in Italy because for a woman it can be tough out there, and she would put she would be a mother during the time that she, during the flexible hours that she needed to be a mother and a housewife, and then she would work through Elance for companies in California after she put her children to bed in the evening. So opportunities that she wouldn't have had otherwise to keep her skills alive and to find a realization to her aspirations through this internet world. Of course, not all is gold, all that glitters, or however the saying goes. There are risks and big question marks linked to the new internet society. And here I just put out a few. So we talked about creation of new jobs and many new opportunities out there. But these opportunities tend to be skewed, at least in the jobs that we consider the best jobs brought by the ICT economy, skewed towards non-routine cognitive skills. So away from doing repetitive tasks that do not require thinking, to tasks that require thinking that need to be adapted to the specific situation. So what happens to all the poor drones out there? And there's really many of them, and not to their fault necessarily, because in many developing countries, not everybody still has yet the opportunity to have education and skills. So the second question is the old Luddite debate. So with technological change, of which internet is one of the many expressions, new occupations are created, but many are destroyed. If you walk around Italy, just an example, you can see a lot of many shops, like the 24-hour convenience stores, that are now completely automatized. You go there, there's a machine, you put the coin, or, well, many coins, and you get something out. Like that, there are many examples, and there are estimates that about 50% of the professions, occupations that exist now will be automatized in the next few decades. So how to adapt to this change that has become much more rapid than it was before? So what about those who don't have the flexibility and the skills to adapt? And finally, internet has brought a revolution in how the employer and employees relate to each other. We come still from, particularly in middle-income and high-income countries, from society where manufacturing was the base of the economy, and traditionally the relationship between employer and employee was the long-term permanent job that you get when you get out of school and you leave, maybe, when you retire. Clearly, this relationship is being, this type of relationship is being shaken. And so is long-term dependent work gone? And what are the new forms of work that replace it? What about the new risks that workers have to take on their shoulders when they engage in this new form of work? And finally, what about the quality of these jobs? Not only in terms of protection from risk, who's going to contribute to pension, health insurance, but also in terms of learning and career development. Are these jobs a stepping stone? Or will people continue to click on the pupils of an eye? So these are some questions for reflection today, and let me pass on the baton to Piotr.